Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Morning Word Show. I am Joseph. I am hatless today because I left it in the car last night after coming home from some typing out in the walking. Actually, not in the walking wall. I went to Washington, D.C. to do some typing, but I left my hat in the car, so you will just have to deal with me not with the hat this morning. It definitely feels a little weird not to have the hat. But this morning, I want to welcome everybody to the stream that is tuning in, potentially new people, potentially people who have been here before. I see Cynical Chill has checked in. Welcome to the stream. Today, I'm thinking of something just a little different. I will take requests if requests come through the chat. If people are curious, I will also answer questions as always. And people say, "Oh, what's going on?" But I realized that one of the things that did make this stream so successful for me before and successful for other people tuning in is they got to see me working on my process as I was going through it. Many times, maybe just because I've been really busy since I had this job, I haven't had time to really sit down and say, what do I want from the stream? And it's not that I plan crazily. That has been outlined and kind of gone through on this stream itself, self-reflective meta conversation. But I realize that I do want to start really digging into my collections and really start finishing the collections of poetry that I have on my mind, on my heart, really, for being able to kind of do that stuff. So today, I am going to at least write one poem, maybe two, about the pandemic. And this is not something I want to dwell on in terms of that. It's not something that I want to even say negatively. It's more that I do want to create a collection about COVID-19, and I want to be obviously genuine about that. So I've been kind of thinking a little bit on what has been my story during the pandemic, and if anybody wants to chime in and talk about their story during the pandemic, that also is absolutely completely a-okay. For me, there is a lot of aspects to that story. There are aspects of pain and anger. A lot of the deeply emotional things happened in March and April and May. There are residual stories of confusion about how here in America there's still a lot of cases rising, and yet people don't seem to be reacting that way. There is some very concrete aspects of that, like what does it look like with masks? What does no theater look like? Things like that, and it's just kind of highlighting and kind of writing about those, and just kind of creating the environment to reflect meaningfully with a meaningful sense on those things. And I think that's what I'm going to do this morning. Part of how my collections always develop, I have done two collections so far. And what usually happens is I write about 5 or 6 poems during the time of the real inspiration, for lack of a better word. I write, I have done 2 collections. One is an unpublished collection of poems I did for my wife, and then the second collection is a hybrid published collection of poems I did for when I dropped out of college. Hybrid publishing means that it wasn't like a full publishing thing. It was more like I kind of self-published, but with the help of someone else. And each time, I wrote a certain amount of poems that were like core poems, not necessarily core and reflected as such in the format, but poems that were written at the time. So, for example, the poems that we worked on this stream, such as John Henry was one of them, and Amanda Bynes a little bit, but Visible was one as well. But Visible wasn't on this stream, it was a different one. But those poems were core poems to my work. But now I want to write more about that. So what does it mean? It means I pull from memory. It means I pull from kind of the feelings that I had and remembering those feelings. And I pull from some from the present day because we're still actually in this time. I'm just going to get myself a white sheet of paper since this will be a draft. So that is what I'm going to work on this morning. And I think that the theme of masks has been weighing on me a little bit. So I'm going to write a little bit about that. I don't want to make it something that becomes something where it's like dramatic or controversial. Good morning, relax your mind. Welcome to the stream. So I see that we have some people that have been diving in that are spamming the chat right now. I don't know how that's happening, but and relax your mind. Has not been here the past couple of days, but I haven't been in his stream the past couple of days. It's been very busy for me the past couple of days, so no worries. Good morning, FMK. As hopefully we don't get any more of these spam chats that are coming in, but I'm just gonna ignore them for now, and if they start to become persistent, then we can try to see how we can report such spammy, unwavy activity. So for everybody that's just tuning in, I'm writing a poem about masks this morning. I think that the next couple of streams are going to kind of be me working through workshopping, processing poems about the pandemic. Let me get some of our awesome Meaning Wave radio on in the background as I type a little bit. There we go. You guys let me know if that is too loud or if it's not too loud. And we're going to switch to our typewriter camera. There must be some switchers. I think I saw you using one, Relax Your Mind, that really help with going back and forth on screens and audio and things like that. I probably need to invest in one of those or an app that does that. MK says he doesn't really hear the music. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. There we go. I don't want the music to overpower the typewriter, but I also don't want the typewriter to I don't want the music to be completely gone. Oh, wow. So FemK talks about her experience with masks. Now I'm also thinking about masks. I live across a care home, and I saw an entire floor become COVID quarantine. I knew because the care personnel had masks. And the people coming to take the bodies also had masks. One by one, the rooms were emptied. That is in a really true way chilling. Part of what this poem seems to be tending towards, and actually what you really unlock there with your comment is that there's a larger and a smaller view, is I was kind of dwelling on the individual aspect of it. So that each person is covered, and when we're covered, there's so much there's so much symbolism, there's so much relationship and metaphor, but there's also so much literal interpretation in terms of what are you hiding. And it's not that you're hiding, not that it's people being duplicitous, but people are, our feelings are covered during this. And then sometimes our feelings aren't covered. And so it's almost like the feelings become part of like the disease itself. On the other hand, there's also something where the masks are a sign of the presence of the disease. So there's always been this like, oh, everybody should be wearing masks, that is out there. But also, you see something different when people know that the disease is present, and like the actual, people that are working with patients have so many layers of PPE. It's like crazy. For those that are tuning in, we're writing a poem about masks. And thoughts, feelings, whatever your emotions about the pandemic are, all welcome in the moment. So I get themes as I'm writing the poems, and one of the themes that I just wrote down, which almost filtered into this poem but is an entire poem on its own, is the surrealism of the entire pandemic. Like, we're all going through a historical thing. And I want to make sure that I keep this stream and the poetry positive, but I also don't want it to be disingenuous. Like I can't dress this up to be something that's joyful in a certain way. It's a different type of joyful, and I think it's more that. Well, I don't know if joyful is really the right word. typewriter. No way. What are those? I can't remember the name of it, but there is a it's like a stasis chamber. What those? It's something where what you do is you are locked into a chamber that's in water and it's floating and it's supposed to be the same temperature as your body and you're supposed to be floating, and not feel anything is the point of it. Suspension chamber. I'm trying to use it. All right. A poem about masks. And we're going to switch back to the typewriter camera. Yeah, so much clicking. I really do need to get myself some sort of like, dashboard. Maybe even like a virtual dashboard app on something. And these are not necessarily meant to be finished poems. These are kind of just exploring feelings, finding where the concentrations are and where real poetry can come to express. Covered. Suddenly, the sight of concealment is blinding. The ivories glistening are relegated to the imagining, finding in eyes a thirst for the reactions, the million minute expressions multiplying themselves as we approach the lepers. But who carries this concealment? The symptomless hidden horror leaves us breathless in the stories. The vision of hazmat entering the mind. Protect me. Do not just mask my mouth, but my eyes and ears as well. So maybe this present may disappear in the suspension chamber of tomorrow. That is covered. So what came out in that poem? And I'll tell you, it really does help to be writing on here. I tried writing some stuff last night when I was busking in between people that were coming up to me, and this is so much better of a space. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being part of this moment. Things that came out, the visions of the hazmat, FMK, that really, your story really made me realize that what the masks will represent for people, and maybe this is part of the reason why a lot of people don't wear them, and that's okay. Well, I personally don't think it's okay, but I'm not going to judge in this moment. That's not what this is about. But I think that the reason why a lot of people might wear them is because it's almost like you're admitting something. But then on the other side, people that are wearing the masks also are, trying to protect themselves from something that's very hard to protect from. And then it becomes something where we want to mask in a belief that the masks will protect everything. And that's why, and I try to emulate the Bible story where it's, I think it's Peter, where Jesus washes his feet. And then Peter says, well, you want to be part of the kingdom of heaven, I need to do this for you. And then Peter says, well, then wash my hands and my head as well. But it's, so do not just mask my mouth, but my eyes and my ears as well. Let me find a way to protect myself from the reality around me. And these might not be necessarily feelings that everybody's having now. Like I'm going to spend the next part of the stream writing a more positive poem because I do feel that I want to have that contrast in the collection. But in this moment, I was kind of going back to, especially when the masks first started appearing and things like that, we don't want to talk about this. It's hard. It's actually, I'm really scared that I'm getting on this stream and I'm writing this poem and I'm going to scare everybody away. Like, oh my goodness, he's going to write COVID poetry now. But I think it's also important to be real. And so this helped a lot. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it aside, and then tomorrow we'll hack at it with a pen, and edit it into something that's a little more fine-tuned. I'm actually thinking that there's 2 poems in here. That's my thought. And Femke affirms, yes, covering for the eyes and ears as well, a wish from withdrawal from the confrontation. I'm writing that down. That is exactly right. And I think here that there is 2 poems. I'm really thinking it, and one of the poems is about wanting to protect ourselves from what's happening out there that's coming at us, and of trying to avoid that confrontation. And the other poem, though, is the hiding of ourselves. So I just wrote 2 poems on the top of it. I'm setting that aside. What are some of the graces? I heard this in a podcast. The word was graces that this lady used. What are some of the graces of this new time? What are some of the things that have brought joy? And I think that the first thing for me that comes to mind, and if you have something to respond with, as always, chat's an open conversation. But for me, the first thing that I kind of respond with is the sense of determination, even in the confusion. And I really don't like the confusion of some of the people in authority. And I want to challenge myself in this moment. Because whenever I've talked to people in personal conversation, I get really upset. I feel like, why are all these people in authority not realizing what they signed up for? And what I mean by that is, and it's complete respect for anybody in authority, but when you choose to take a position of responsibility, what you're really doing there is you have a slight gamble, and the gamble is always pretty secure. And the idea is that, hey, I'm running this town, I'm on the board of supervisors, I help run a hospital or a school system, and things are probably going to be normal, and I will deal with daily challenges. But if something really goes crazy, the fall is on me, and I have to do something to lead people. And that's at least what the responsibility I try to take in my life when I'm given responsibility, is that I have to answer to the fact that if things are going great, that's fine, but if something really goes crazy, then at that point, that's my calling. And I feel like that there's been a lot of confusion because these people that figured that they might be able to cruise through the positions that they were given, a town is a town, it has its problems, but you're relatively babysitting something there. But then suddenly something large like this happens, something unexpected, and everybody has to become creative all at once. And it's not that everybody can do that easily, but you have to have that always in the back of your mind. But even so, even with my frustration at that, I want to challenge that frustration. And I want to praise people that are trying to make this work. Like, I want to imagine that I have a superintendent or I have a member of the city council in front of me right now. I want to try that. It's an experiment. I've been rather negative, and the important thing about approaching this moment is to remember that our own perceptions are going to cloud absolutely everything. Hey, that might work good in a poem about masks. Actually, believe it or not, I'm writing that down. Our mask filter perceptions. And Femke has dropped some of the graces that Femke. I don't know if you're actually. I don't know, Femke, if you're he or she. I just don't. I actually don't know, because it's so, actually, believe it or not, you can't tell from chat. Some graces: more time at home with loved ones, opportunities for visionaries to make a difference. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. Also, the falling away of busy work at the periphery of our lives. I am going to quickly snap a photo of that portion of the chat because you might have just inspired several poems right there. Because, and that's part of what it's kind of doing, is the moment I start diving into this, like, this was really hard, actually. Like, I even tried yesterday, like, writing down a list of things that I could write about, and I was just like, I don't know. But, like, when I get in this moment for some reason, morning words changes me, and it really invigorates me. Like, I hope it invigorates all of you that are listening or tuning in, and having that, instead of having, like, you know, and it's always good to have the different paces of life, but it's sometimes good to just settle with the words. So, and I hope that the conversation is stimulating, and I hope we just, you know, have a good time. And if you have not said something in the chat and you're tuning in, feel free to drop something, anything, feeling, emotion. You could even spam, but not too much spam. No, FMK, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. We haven't had a lot of people just dropping in on the chat. I think that I take this wherever it takes me, and wherever it takes you guys, and I want to just make sure it's always a place where people can feel free to just say what they need to say. There should be no sense of social awkwardness here. Honestly, it's just fun. It's relaxing. It's meant to be a place of expression for everybody. You know, it's what we need. Sometimes we need that space, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just want to listen. And now I am ready. And we're going to bring back our Meaning Wave Radio. So the music that you're hearing now, as I have always affirmed on these streams, is Akira the Dawn, but what I am now actually tuning into is Akira the Dawn has recently launched a 24/7 radio lo-fi stream, just like many other lo-fi channels. And all the music is his, and it's a mix of both the vocalized Meaning Wave songs and the instrumentals, which I know that Relax Your Mind is a huge fan of the instrumentals. FemK and I have been on the Meaning Wave morning and evening streams. Actually, I don't know if you have a different username over YouTube, but okay. And this is an instrumental as well. This one is from the album Persuasive Beats, which when Relax Your Mind goes on his Call of Duty streams, it's played it in the background. And this is the one that goes, hey! MK says that they're only on Twitch. I severely limit my account to protect myself from overreaching. And I think that's actually a really good thing, because plenty of times, even with the trying of discipline, I get so caught up on YouTube, just my mind will go. Hey, the morning shows are awesome. And thank you for tuning into my morning show. It means a lot. it was actually a mistake. I was not actually tuned into the radio stream.
The thing about that is pathological and inexcusable and shameful. You know, I used to watch kids skating. I liked watching those kids.
Well, I have fixed it. We're not tuned in to the Meaning Wave radio, but now we are. So now we have Jordan Peterson joining us.
It's like, no, I don't want to wear a helmet. I want to expose myself to this danger. It's not that I'm stupid.
And if you guys have any opinions on in terms of whether you want me to just keep it instrumentals or if you like the Meaning Wave radio, feel free to drop those in chat. Yeah, it's everything is an experimentation, slow little figuring out fixes, that whole thing. We're almost done with this poem here, or this at least this poetry fragment. Alright, so this poem is finished.
Because they needed some danger.
Alright, there we go. If you're just tuning in, I do poetry on demand, but also have been writing some of my own work this morning. And let's read the poem Scene. Crisis shrinks to the present. Hour and minute, the pitched battle of heart and mind. The best of us looks to the invisible enemy and sees the tenacity of humanity. Finding the microscope reveals the littlest antibodies against anxiety. Even the scrambling and rambling, running from option to function is a vivid expression of hope. And the conflict of ideas makes the collaboration of ideals. When the enemy is invisible, your stamina is not. And that is the poem Scene, which is a poetic expression. Let's see if I can get... there we go. There's the poem. A poetic expression to start kind of figuring out how to write a really nice, positive, inspiring, understanding, truthful poem about people in authority reacting to the pandemic. And that is the poem Scene. I think there's a lot of things that I do like about this one, and there's some things that I am struggling with. Like, this line is interesting, the littlest antibodies against anxiety, because I don't want to imply that people don't suffer from anxiety, and in fact, that's an entire poem on its own. Anxiety equaling disease, like spreading in the same way. I had a really interesting conversation. And FMK asks, can you repeat the sentence about ideas and ideals? So, even the scrambling and rambling, running from option to function is a vivid expression of hope. And the conflict of ideas makes the collaboration of ideals. And that's an interesting line. I'm not sure. Sometimes I write things and I don't know if they're true. That one seemed to be a really interesting reflection. I think that it's possible to believe that we have a conflict of ideas, and so we have different ways of looking at the world and doing things. But if they could make, maybe I should say they should make, or that in this poem they make a collaboration on ideals. So, like, it's a good example to throw out there is a bunch of colonists whining about taxes and representation creates the belief in representative democracy. Like that's, and even when people conflict against each other, there is a vision that comes out of that as long as they still want to work together. And I think that, I don't know, that line is gonna stick with me today. I don't know. But it's a beautiful line. And it's so interesting because I assumed when you asked me to repeat it that you might have been casting doubt on it, but you probably weren't. It's myself that's casting doubt on it. What is the meaning of that line? It's a good line. So there's a lot from there is a lot from here that I can really pull. And other stuff that has kind of come up, the sense of whether the disease is real life, the fact that this, being seen is important. And Femke says, I feel like it invites meditation. I was not casting doubt. And I don't think you were. And I suddenly found myself rushing at that line. Like, wait, hold on. Why'd you write that, Joe? And you're right. It does invite meditation. And I'm writing that down. So we have here two wonderful poems that kind of have jump-started my work on this collection. And I will probably every once in a while advertise out to Twitch, not every day, but occasional days, requests for poetry. Now, anybody can always request a poem anytime. But I think that what was starting to happen was I was starting to put out requests for poetry every day. And you guys were like answering it like crazy. And it's still fun to do that interaction. But I think that if I do that every day, it might get a little old real quick, unless we have constantly new people filtering in here. So tell your friends and your family that if they want a poem, they can kind of tune in and they can request. I think I'm gonna do a request show Wednesday. I will do a request show Wednesday. Let me take the poem off the thing. I have time for one more, if you guys are up for it. And I think that I want to end on one of these other things that Femke said, the falling away of busy work at the periphery of our lives. And I think I want to get some notes down on that. Because that one is actually one of the most contemplative things. In fact, the pandemic really makes us question what is necessary in our society. And that's not to say that some things are not sorely missed, but like it was definitely something where so many of the everybody was always like, you have to show up to the office, you have to be working here, you have to be doing it this way, that way. And then it turned out they didn't have to. So TCA_11A says, what do you think about the poem Jabberwocky? Thank you. I think, so Jabberwocky, I have to reach pretty far back because I should know it better, but I have to reach pretty far back in my mental, mind to remember the details of the poem. But what I remember about it is that it is fun. Is that it is such a creative way to invent out of nothing. Because Jabberwocky, like what's a Jabberwocky? But I can't remember the name of the guy that wrote it, but he created it and gave it so much life. And what's interesting about that is using poetry as creative and not reflective. So, like, that is, and obviously the creative is always a metaphor. Creative is always reflective. So, like, I create a story about, and I was actually going to try to do this yesterday, a spaceman and a buccaneer fighting and not knowing why they're fighting. There's a reflection in that. It might be some sort of metaphor on humans getting lost in conflict in society. But Jabberwocky, that one, from what I remember, and I could be misreading my own memory of it, because I frankly don't know it that familiar, but you want to know something, we can read it over the stream. So we're going to take a left turn here, folks. And I'm going to read Jabberwocky on the stream. I've been interested in, and that's Lewis Carroll. That's why I knew that it was fun. Lewis Carroll. I have been interested in doing more reading on the streams, mainly because I don't think I'm the end-all to be-all in terms of poetry. I actually have Nirvana by Charles Bukowski sitting next to me here, and I'm going to wait for the right moment to break that out. And TCA 11A says, I completely agree with what you have just said. I am so glad that we've found ascension. So let me rediscover the playfulness of Jabberwocky. So Jabberwocky is a poem written by Lewis Carroll about a monster. That's all I remember about it. So I'm going to read it now. And the poem is entitled Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. 'Twas brilling, and the slithy toves did gry and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jujube bird, and shun the fruminous spandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Long time the maxome he sought. So rested he by the tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. One chew, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. Hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjeste caloo he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brilling, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrave. Jabberwocky by Lewis Carroll. A bit scary, but Femke, if you listen to, and you obviously listen to Meaning Wave, and Meaning Wave, by the way, TCA underscore 11A is a music genre that I talk about a lot on the stream. A poem for me, and TCA says, a poem for me is just art rearranged into words. If you can read one that inspires you and says, wow, this is creative, and I haven't seen this before, then truly the poet has fulfilled his work of art. I agree to a point. And part of where my heart goes when you say that is I think that the originality is originality and creativity is very important, like critically important. Like, I don't want to make it seem like any response to that diminishes that importance. One of the things that I love about poetry, I do street poetry, so I'm very much into, for lack of a better word, plebeian art, like being with the people, is the genuineness of a poet who may be writing things that are very similar to what other people have written before, but writes them from his or her heart. Like, that's important too. From an artist's standpoint, Jabberwocky is magnificent. And it is playful and is fun, and Lewis Carroll is doing so many things in that poem. And what I was leading to before is that Alan Watts actually talks about the Gyre and Gimble in the Way as Lewis Carroll kind of practicing a sort of Zen art through the poetry. So it's really interesting how he kind of takes the nonsense work and makes it into something very meaningful. But also, I think that what, for me, fulfills also the art as well is when it is happening in a genuine way. And so there's kind of two reflections on that. And I don't believe that the amateur poet who writes a couple of nice sounding verses should be hung up in the Louvre. But the fact of the matter is they have something beautiful going there too. And TCA_11A says, I meant it in the context of brilliance. When the poet reaches his highest level of work. And you want to know something? I think that I would be hard-pressed to find another example like Jabberwocky that gets so intricate with the playfulness of words, because it takes a lot to invent words and then use them in a way that's genuine. Because it's very, I could just say the Globardor went to the sling slong and try to invent that, but that doesn't actually make sense. But Jabberwocky makes sense, even though it's nonsense. K says, now I feel like it's a poem for adults to again experience the not knowing and words not having meaning, being overwhelmed by having to interpret all these things. That's a great way to interpret that. So the Nintendo Switch Lite is interjecting into the chat. What would you do for a follow? I'll do a poem for a follow. If you want a poem, I do poetry on the spot. TCA, I want to thank you so much for bringing Jabberwocky into the conversation. I think I'm going to make it a staple to have a classic poem be part of every stream. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but as you guys can all see here, I'm stretching into nearly the hour level here. But Nintendo Switch Lite, if you want to throw me a topic, I write you a poem on the spot. We have about 5 minutes left. I'll have it done, and I'll be able to read it to you, and will be that I can do for a follow if that's something you're interesting. I mean, I'm not going to get up and dance and sing, but I can do that. TCA, I want to thank you so much again for dropping Jabberwocky in the stream. I encourage, if you feel so inclined, please consider following me. I'm trying to reach affiliate status and doing my due duty to here. But thank you so much again for dropping that in. And if you have any other recommendations for classic poems to bring into our space here, I do this every morning at 7 a.m. And I will be doing more streams in the afternoon. I may even do an afternoon stream today of a typewriter repair, where it's going to be very different. But yeah, that's where I'm at. TCA11 mentions the poets Fernando Pessoa or Luis de Camões. They're quite unique poets in the poetry world. What I'm doing right now is I'm taking a picture of that because the answer is no, I have not. And to be completely honest, can you roll up your sleeves? Looks like you're working when you write. That's actually a really interesting way to kind of change things. I usually have short sleeves, but I have long sleeves today. But back to you, TCA. The poets, I have not heard of them, but what I'm going to do today is I'm going to definitely check out some of their stuff, and tomorrow morning on the stream, I'll try to read one of their poems. I think that would be a great way to kind of respond to that question. It's not just a no, I haven't heard of them, but let me get into that. I have actually never studied poetry. I studied poetry in high school, which is the reason why Jabberwocky was like such a reach back into my memory. Do you have experience with impersonating yourself as an artist? That's never. When you say impersonating yourself, do you mean like pretending to be myself? I've never done that. That is such an intriguing experience. I don't know. I mean, I'm actually kind of confused by the question, to be perfectly honest. But to impersonate myself as an artist, I mean, there's a self-reflection that I kind of do. Like when you started in innocence and playing, and within no time your desire became frozen. I'm sorry, I'm still confused by the question. And I think that I feel like that you're talking about something that is so meta that impersonating yourself as an artist. You started in innocence and playing, and within no time your desire. Oh, I think I see it. I think that I'm reading the comments and I'm processing here. I'm so sorry. Ah, that is a new concept for me. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to just completely table the concept, not because I think you're wrong in suggesting it. It's more that I don't have an answer. I do not have an answer. And then TCA underscore 11A, if you're studying high level poetry, it's mandatory in Portugal to study them in Portuguese classes. But when translated, harder. Okay, I'll work on reading some of those poets, and I will definitely see about getting myself a good translation, because good translations are important. We have reached the end of our stream here. What I'm going to do now, so I have decided that I am going to be doing hour-long streams, and then rolling into the, I'm going to be broadcasting Akira the Don's morning streams as well. Very motivational, meaningful streams. So feel free if you want to keep tuning in for Akira the Don and his musical morning streams. Otherwise, thank you all so much. FMK, I want to dive deeper into that. I think that you absolutely stopped me in my tracks. Oh, we still have Nintendo Switch Lite here. How old am I? I am 27 years old. I'm comfortable saying that. So Nintendo Switch Lite, tune in tomorrow morning at same time, same bat time, same pat channel, and I will write you a poem about rolling up my sleeves and getting to work. And then TCA11 says, thanks, have a good one, and take care. And thanks for bringing this to Twitch. It's the first time I see it. Well, poetry is definitely I think it's so accessible to the human heart. I think it's secretly a language we all know how to speak, but we're not speaking. And I've noticed that when poetry is brought into unique spaces, people really receive it. And that doesn't mean it's the most important thing in their life, and I don't suggest it, but it's almost like you get little infusion of meaning and art in that moment, and that's kind of what happens with that. So thank you all so much for tuning in. You have a great day, and coming next is Akira the Don's morning stream.
I believe that most human beings are only living at about 40% of their capability. The mind has a governor, like a car. If you're driving a car and the car has a governor on it, the car may say 130 miles an hour, but the governor's set for 91. Once that governor sets in, you get to 91, that car starts doing this. The car wants to go. The car wants to go, but that fucking factory said,